In the last few years, there have been more than 10,000 documented hate crimes against Asian Americans. When you look at really the data that shows Americans' attitudes towards Asian Americans, you can see the cost of the invisibility of Asian Americans in our curriculum. A recent survey showed that 42% of Americans, when they're asked to name a famous Asian American, the number one answer was, "I don't know." The number two answer was Bruce Lee, and the number three answer was Jackie Chan, who isn't even American.
As a country, the inability to recognize Asian Americans as American has dangerous consequences.
One of my female students said that she was at a store and a man came up to her and screamed at her to go back to where she came from. And this was frightening for my, teenage student who didn't know what this man was going to do. And she was also upset as to why this person thought that she should go back to where she came from when she was born in this country and she had lived in Wisconsin her entire life. And I realized that, for this man, people that look like me are foreigners. They're perpetual foreigners.
Growing up without representation can make students feel like they don't belong in a country they were born in, causing all sorts of identity issues.
I grew up like a lot of Asian Americans here in the Midwest. My whole life, I never wanted to be Asian. In fact, I wanted to be white for the longest time. And when I started teaching, the curriculum was all of the classic writers, and none of them looked like me. And I was comfortable with that because that's what I grew up with. And it wasn't until the last few years that I really started, questioning that and to try and present authors that looked like my students. One of the things that I've learned in my teaching career is that how we grew up and how we were taught greatly impacts the way that we teach. And if you never had Asian American visibility in your school curriculum, then that's a blind spot that you're not really aware of. I think half the battle is really just being aware that there is an issue. And then the other half is really accessing the growing library of resources that's developing.
Including Asian Americans in your curriculum will provide the needed representation for those students, and it also provides visibility toward your non-Asian American students. This can help mitigate the perpetual foreigner association, along with the bias and hate language that can accompany that.
We deconstruct an essay by Kabby Hong about the slur I never expected to hear in 2020, and she talks about the fear that she had as the wave of anti-Asian hate crimes is sweeping across the country. And I got an email at the end of the day from a student who is very thoughtful and very quiet and is not Asian. And he talked about how he had never heard about this issue, and he was really grateful for me bringing this up and for me talking about it in class. And I think that's the most powerful lesson in all of this, is that we don't do diversity work just for our kids of color. I think it's incredibly impactful and powerful for all kids, not just our kids of color.
In addition to including more Asian Americans in your resources, you can also give students the chance to have conversations about identity and erasure.
Here in Wisconsin, we have the third largest Hmong population in the country, and we had an 80% increase in Asian American Pacific Islander population since our last census. So the Asian American community has grown dramatically in our state. You don't have to be Asian American to talk about Asian American identity issues. I think the most important thing is to provide a safe space for students to feel comfortable sharing what they know and sharing also what they don't know. And that is the one thing that I've learned in my teaching, is that kids are hungry to have discussions that are about important issues that they see in our society today. And the students these days are not afraid of those discussions. That's the message that I hear time and time again from my students, is that visibility and representation are critical.
How can you create more visibility for your Asian American students?